everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we discuss cards from Lord of the Rings, the Living Card Game by Fantasy Flight Games. And I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride. And today we are discussing the tactics card, the Rivendell Blade, from the Road to Rivendell, from the Dwarrowdelf cycle. And it is a one-cost attachment item and weapon which attached to a Noldor or Sylvan character, restricted. When attached character attacks an enemy, that enemy gets -2 defense until the end of the phase. So, David, what did you think of the Rivendell Blade?
When I saw the Rivendell Blade, I thought it was a brilliant card. First of all, I love the artwork on the card, and it makes me think of an elvish sword, something that's going to be fashioned from Rivendell. I like that it wasn't unique, but it was restricted. It's one of the many swords in the armory at Rivendell, and that I appreciated. It seems like a lot of the cards were unique up to this that were weapons. I also think it's most brilliant because instead of increasing the character's attack, it actually decreases the defender's defense. And it's really the first card that I saw that kind of flipped that dynamic on its head, where you where you can look at attack from either the attacker side or the defender side. And so it really opened up my eyes to a new dynamic in deck building. And so the Rivendell Blade, for one cost to reduce something's defense by 2, is really good. The downside is that those enemies that you come across sometimes don't have 2 defense to lower. So you may be attacking something that already has just 1 defense or no defense. And in that case, the Rivendell Blade isn't as useful or useful at all compared to a weapon that increases your own attack. But nonetheless, I really love the mechanics of the card and how it affects the person that is defending your own attack as opposed to buffing your own attack itself. What do you think, Grant?
I love the Rivendell Blade. I still do. I play it in most of my decks where I have a Noldor hero. I don't really play it on when I'm running with a Sylvan hero because I don't generally run Sylvan. I don't generally run Legolas, to be fair. But when it first came out, the Road to Rivendell, I looked at... Obviously, I was using the digital surface, and I was looking at the hero that came out with it, which was Elladan at that point in time, which is a Tactics Noldor hero. And I looked at it, and it was like, wow, these will work perfectly well together. And then later on, is the card pool immense, and you got immense. You started seeing cards like Elf Friend, and that give the trait of Noldor or Sylvan to a character you control. And then you attach that with Rivendell Blade, and you could give Aragorn minus the ability to negate a defense off an enemy, even if it's a big beefy enemy like a cave troll. That 2 points of defense off it could mean the hill troll surviving an attack or dying from an attack. And it was like, yes, that works very well. I mean, at one point I was running an Elladan, Elrahir and Glorfindel deck for 25 threat on a Tri-Sphere, and having the Dunedain marks, warnings, plus the Rivendell Blade, and going and smashing Moria to find out what happened to Balin, I had a great time, but it was a Tri-Sphere deck, so it didn't always work. Rivendell Blade, for me, is probably one of my favourite weapon attachments to date,
I think for the one cost, it makes it really worthwhile.
Well, there is that, and the artwork is phenomenal. Obviously, you mentioned the artwork when you were discussing it, but to actually see a blade crafted in Eregion, which is where Rivendell's basically in, is amazing. I mean, you hear of the dwarves making good armor and weapons, but they're not as fluid a piece as what the elves have. The elves have a fluidity about their weapons and about their armor that just look superb.
It was more. I feel like the elves were more artistic when they made these things, when they crafted these things, and I would call the dwarven craftsman hardy, like hardy versus arty, like.
Yeah, definitely. But you still see a lot of nice things in where the dwarves are created, like Throw's bow and axe from the treasure cards from the Hobbit sagas. But then you look at something like this, and you can see where the two crafts have diverged from each other. And in all honesty, I think, barring Mithril, the dwarves have pretty stiff competition coming from the elves.
Yeah. In terms of card combos, just the one that I wanted to point out myself was the Rivendell Blade with Haldir, because Haldir, the hero Haldir from lore, if you choose not to engage an enemy during this round, you can declare Haldir as an attacker against enemies that aren't engaged with you. And so that means he can either attack somebody who is engaged with another player, or he can attack people in the in the staging area. And so Haldir can definitely take advantage of that Rivendell Blade in a lot of ways, because sometimes you want to leave things in the staging area without and not have to worry about it. And Haldir can take that Rivendell Blade and kind of smack around those bigger enemies and hopefully kill him off before you're forced to engage with him. And Haldir, in true Walsh style, he's got a 9 threat cost. So I think that's a natural pairing among all the other cards that we mentioned, like Legolas and some of the other Noldor characters.
Yeah, I generally run Rivendell Blade on Glorfindel. Obviously, he's got the 3 base attack power, and when I'm running a Noldor deck and I've got access to tactics, I'm generally running Glorfindel anyway, and he's generally my primary attacker because the other 2 are dedicated for questing. So, David, with 1 ring being the 1 card to rule them all and 10 being not, what would you rate the Rivendell Blade as?
Yeah, I think the Rivendell Blade is one of those attachments that I want to put right in the middle, and so that right in the middle would normally be a 5. But the fact that it's not a unique card and it only costs 1 as a weapon attachment, I think that pushes it a little towards being more useful than less useful. But again, it's not an auto include in every one of my decks, like some of the other cards that I have. So I would give this Rivendell Blade a 4. How about you, Grant? Where are you putting it?
Well, you took the word right out of your mouth. I was going to give it a 4 as well, mainly because as the card pool has expanded, I haven't found the need to be using the Rivendell Blade. I always have it in there, but I don't need it as much as I did, say, taking on the Watcher in the Water.
So join us for our next episode when we discuss the Elfstone, a 1-cost lore attachment that does all sorts of neat things. Have a great day.